Never stop chasing your dreams.
And never say never. Welcome to the Rainbow Remix. As we continue our Best of Rewind series, this week we're bringing you just a few of our favorite authors that we've had in the mix. First up in the mix is Anthony Nerada, author of Skater Boy.
So, Anthony, I found you on Threads. I
Nice.
was like, look at his adorable little face. I need to stalk him a little bit. No,
Oh god.
I love following queer authors. Like that's just I love, when we can get stuff out there. And so I saw your upcoming book is
Yes.
called Skater Boy, right?
It is. Yes. 20
Yeah, I
days.
love it. I love that cover.
Wow. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. So, is it based on Avril Lavigne's 2002 song?
Well, legally, I'll say it's loosely inspired by Avril
So
Lavigne's
just
Skater
that's
Boy
yeah,
song.
right. Okay. Because I'm like, in Canada, that song was like really popular for a while. Um,
Totally.
yeah, but it's funny because the song does kind of tell a story, but I love that you've put this queer spin on it. And I think
Yeah.
like I guess my one of my questions, the first one is, did it come about when you heard the song and it just kind of stuck in the back of your mind and you thought one day I'm gonna like turn this into a queer story? Or was it like the song just came on, more recently? I mean, like because I don't want to ask you how old you are, but you look like a baby.
Well, I was very much a child when Avril Lavigne's Skater Boy came on the radio, so I'll
Yeah,
say as much.
yeah.
But it's a really good question. I actually have a fun story behind how this story came to be. I was actually My partner and I had just finished a year-long stint of working at Walt Disney World in Orlando. So we were
Oh,
down there in the 2018, 2019. So back in the fall of 2019, we decided, along with one of our friends from Norway, who we had met on our program down in Disney World, that we were going to go on a 5-week road trip back home to BC. So we figured we're young, let's do this while we can.
yeah,
So we hit the road, and I have a very specific moment that I clearly remember. We were between like Las Vegas and Arizona, Nevada and Arizona, if you will, somewhere between there. And Skater Boy came on the radio, and something just like switched in my head. I was like, I was taken back to a time when I was a kid in my family's car, and I just remember listening to all of my favorite songs and changing the pronouns in my head so that I could kind of resonate with those lyrics.
yeah.
And so I was like, what a cool book that would be if I wrote about a punk skater boy and a ballerino, and what that would look like. And so, of course, setting it in high school, in young adults, I can't have them be on stage and a baby on the way like the lyrics
Right,
say.
right,
So
right,
I really did have to reinvent what that story looked like, and especially what that story looked like in 2024,
right,
25, whenever I
right.
was writing it. So that's kind of how it came to be. And now we're 20 days away, and I'm terrified and excited.
You seem to have a really supportive publisher, though.
Oh, I do. Oh, yeah. My publisher, Soho Teen, has been so incredible right from the beginning. Like I was on submission with Skater Boy for about 2 years,
Okay.
shopping it around New York,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I knew it was going to be kind of a tough sell. Like my main character, he is angry. He's an angry little punk, and not a lot of stories tell stories with
right.
main characters like that front and center. And so I got a lot of rejection for many many months until Soho Teen came around, and my editor Alexa just she inherently knew exactly what I was trying to get at with this
Oh,
story, and we took it apart and put it back together again, and it was just a beautiful partnership.
what a peace of mind, when
Yeah.
your publisher doesn't ask you to make changes that are so out of your realm,
Yeah.
that it really screws with your mind and what you had, you know, set in your mind. Because I ran into that on my first book. And I think it was because the publisher that I chose was very urban, and they were like, "Oh, I think we need some ethnic characters." And I was like, "Oh God, like that's a big ask." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like a white chick writing about a black queer experience. I don't have that in me, and I feel like I couldn't do it justice. So I tweaked as much as I could and feel comfortable with. But it felt like, just the wrong ask, out of everything,
Totally.
out of everything.
So
That was tough.
I have a question. In
Mhm.
writing this book and but inspired by the song, were there copyright issues with that? Was there anything about, I know you changed it, you had to change it. So what happens when someone does that? Was there any, does that happen with writing books
Yeah,
or?
yeah. I mean, you definitely have to be you have to pay a lot of attention to copyright legalities. I mean, even further to that, every chapter in my book has a chapter title, and those chapter titles are plays on early 2000 punk pop music lyrics, or at least song titles. And so with song titles specifically, those actually can't be copyrighted. So those are kind of free reign for everyone to use. Granted, Skater Boy is spelt like the correct way and
Yeah,
not the Avril
yeah.
way, but
Right.
yeah, you definitely have to be very conscious of what you're using in relation to the song. If it's specific lyrics within the body of the text, you have to be very careful with those too. But we were like I said, like this book doesn't really have anything to do with that song. It just was loosely inspired by it, so I got to have creative freedom in a lot of realms for that.
It's so great because I mean, it's so recognizable. You know what I mean? The minute you hear Skater Boy, you hear the song. You know what I mean? You go right to the song. So that's amazing to me. And again, I did the same thing. Like I shot my book around so much that I just gave up on it. And I told my editor, like, you can do what you want with it, but I'm done. Like I'm done reading, rejection letters and stuff. Like, don't even
Yeah.
tell me. So
Yeah, it's
like,
hard.
yeah, like a
It's
year
hard.
and
The publishing industry is very difficult, and a lot of people they do give up because it can be so demoralizing. But
yeah.
I so believed in this story, and you're right. Like I have had so many people, even since the days of my cover reveal, when people see my book, they immediately think of the song, they start singing it. And I've had like Lynn Painter, a New York Times bestseller, messages me all the time and is like, "Damn you, like I saw a post about your book, I started singing the song." And to me,
Yes,
I'm just like, mission accomplished. I did what I had to do, and
right.
it's in your head because of it.
It's so good, and you're getting such good reviews. Like I read Rob's review. Is it yeah, Rob, right? Couch. Is
Oh,
that it?
Robbie Couch, yes, yeah,
Yeah,
of course,
right.
yeah.
I saw his blurb, and it's so nice to have this momentum behind it. And really, it launches when? When's the actual launch date?
February 6th.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So it's got this great build up and momentum behind it. And you are fortunate enough to be able to take it on tour.
I am, yeah. That was a total surprise to me.
Is it
How
cool?
did that work?
Go ahead, Jay.
I was going to say, how does that work with the tour? Does your publisher put the tour together?
Yeah, so it can be a collection of things. Like the author can put money up front and go on their own tour. A publicist can back you in and pay for that. I was very fortunate enough in that my publisher did pay for my trip to all the stops that I'm going on, and they organized the bulk of it. But early on, when we had our first initial publicist meeting, they're like, "What do you want to do? What do you feel comfortable doing?" And I was like, "I have waited my entire life for this moment. You do whatever you need to. I will do it all."
So
So that was really awesome.
this is your first book then, right?
This is my very first book. I mean,
Amazing.
it's the fourth book that I've written, but the first one that I got published.
Right. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like you got to kiss a lot of frogs, you
You
know?
got to do a lot, and I queried to find an agent for about 10 years before I landed my agent with Skater Boy. So it was a very long journey, but I mean I wouldn't trade it for anything because I'm here now.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. And it's in the young adult realm genre,
Yes.
which is really picking up steam now. And I try and like it's like chicken and the egg thing. Like is it picking up steam because Netflix is plucking books and making series, or is it picking up steam because I think more young adults are craving those kinds of books. It's not Goosebumps anymore and the Babysitter's
Yeah.
Club. Like they want young
Right.
adult books. So um it just seems like it's a really good market to hit. I mean, we've all been there. Everybody's, we've been young adults. Like we know of which we write. You know what I mean? And
Totally.
that's one of the things that I love is a person that writes what they know. So
Yeah.
you were saying that your main character is a little angry. Did that come from anywhere?
Yeah,
Did you,
I mean, like, I guess it had to have because people who know me are like, I didn't realize you were that angry. And I'm like, well, neither did I, but it came from somewhere.
it's
But
just
I, but I think,
coming out,
but I, yeah, but I think it's a very universal experience for queer kids, especially queer closeted kids in high school, to experience those feelings of anger at a world where you don't really fit in, or in friend groups that you don't see yourself, or you see high school romances going on all around you and none of them are queer, and what does that mean for you when, like,
Yeah.
I've always been a hopeless romantic, so to see everyone around me finding someone and being the only one there that is left out, it does impact you whether you know it or not.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I 100%, yeah, I definitely believe you could tap right into that. I
Yeah.
mean, you feel so misunderstood, and yet there's so few people that you can talk about it with,
Yeah.
and you're just stuck with it. You're stuck with those feelings you don't even know what to do with. So yeah, I would imagine definitely like because Jay and I are both late bloomers. You know, we followed the herd and got married to men,
Right.
and
Right.
in
Yeah.
marriages, and then it dawned on us like way late in life. But I think,
Much later. Much,
yeah,
much.
but you know what? I'm so okay with that. Like my childhood and my high school experience, I loved it. I wouldn't change it for the world. Um, and when I moved, I was in upstate New York near the Canadian border on,
Nice.
I grew up in Niagara Falls, but on the New York side, and there was
Awesome.
nothing up there that was relatable at the time. But my mother opened a restaurant in Florida, so I moved to Florida right after graduation, and that was like a huge adult playground. And it was, got to explore all kinds of things and still went with the herd. Still went with the herd even after that. Um, but yeah, I think everybody has, some pent up teen angst somewhere that they can tap into, at any given time. Your
Yeah.
tour, are they queer bookshops too, or mainstream?
uh that's a good question. I think they are mainstream for the most part. We have a few indie bookstores mixed into the blend. I know my LA stop, where I'm speaking with Adam Sass, the author of Your Lonely Nights Are Over. That's going to be at the Rip Bodice, which is a indie bookstore that exclusively only handles like romance books. So that's going to be really, really cool, like niche market to go into.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm doing my pre-order campaign with a few indie bookstores locally, on this side of the border and on the other side, just so I can get that mix as well, because I think indie bookstores are our lifeline, especially for queer bookstores. So
Oh God, yes. We
yeah.
had one of the oldest, most celebrated gay bookstores called Gay's the Word
I
in,
love it. I went
in
there in
London.
April of last year.
Oh God. It's like if
Yeah,
you're in London, you just have to go. You just
you
have to
have to.
find
You
it.
have to
You
make
have
the
to go.
trip.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah,
worth it. And the staff, the people, they're so they were so helpful when I was getting started with tips of going in the right direction,
yeah.
with publishing and all that kind of stuff. Um, and actually on our audio stream, I had an author named Clare Lydon who writes a lot of lesbian fiction, and she was so revered, and I went to a an author speaking thing, a reading, and I met her, and she has this really great voice. And I was like, Claire, can you do a podcast? And she was like, oh, I don't know anything about podcasting. I'm like, I'll teach you. I'll teach you. It was like, and we set it up, and she learned so quick. and was so good at it and had such a great following. So she did it for like 5 years. And it was such a great working relationship because those last like 2 years, she was sending me like completely edited. I didn't have to do anything. I just had to throw it up on the stream, like it was so, she adapted so well, just going from author to podcaster. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, she's still doing one with another author.
Next is author Clare Lydon from the Lesbian Book Club.
Yeah. So listen, I love that you're here. I love that you're doing this. I hate why, because you're bringing the Lesbian Book Club with Clare Lydon to a close, and we have had such a fantastic run. We really, really did. I mean, think back to when we first started.
Yeah. No, it has been an incredible thing to do. Sort of for me, it's introduced me to podcasting, and it's just been amazing. And you've been very generous with your hosting it and producing it for a very long time before I worked out what you had to do.
So far, you've grown.
But it's been great.
I remember when I remember walking you through like how to use the recording software and all that, and you're like an old pro now, and it's like to see that growth has been incredible. It really has. It's been one of the things I talk about to when someone's thinking about getting into it, and I always say, like, I know it sounds scary, I know it says, when you look at what you have to do and you start researching softwares and microphones and this and that and everything, it gets overwhelming. Yeah. You do end up just kind of falling into it. I mean, like I said, you're like a literal pro now. You don't need me now.
Well, I know where to cut out all the ums and ahs. There you go. I just gave you some ums and ahs. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things, isn't it? I always think that I'm not very good at sort of reading instructions. I've recently done the Clifton Strengths test. I don't know if you've heard of that. And basically, you answer a load of questions, and then it tells you what your top 5 strengths are. And one of them is strategic. And one of the things of being strategic is you just like to think about something straight away and then wonder how you can sort of get from A to B in the quickest possible route. So solve something really quickly. And that is very much me. I'm no good at reading instructions. So if I've got something to learn something new, I just do it and then learn while I'm doing it. So that's literally what we do with the podcasting.
I think I might be a little bit like that. Like I bought a corner shelf unit for my kitchen worktop, and came in a couple of pieces with a few things, and I threw away the instructions in the box and I went at it for 90 minutes, and I took it apart and put it together about 40 times. And I'm like, how hard can this be? Like, it's like this big, like, what's the problem? So I ended up digging the instructions out and reading them and then I did it. But yeah, I think it's fun. Like, I just go into it in attack mode, and then I make the situation 10 times worse, and then I back up and I do it the way you're supposed to do it. So I don't know if strategic is the right word for that, but yeah. I think my wife is the same as you. Like she's very much problem solver. It doesn't faze her to do the research, do the work, all that kind of stuff. Whereas I'm like, I got it. No, I never do. So let's, I wanted to ask you, like you've done 72 episodes over the span of, I don't even know how long. Do you know how long? 2017?
I think it's longer than that. I don't know. Then you've stumped me with this question. I'm not sure. Is the answer? I can have a look. But yeah, it's. I think it's been like 5 years, maybe.
I think it's been 5, and you know that, and I know, like, I get asked this question all the time, so you're probably going to be like, I can't believe he asked me that. But was there one interview that stood out in your mind, like you were so happy to be able to do it and it turned out the way you wanted it to, and it was everything you wanted it to be, like one of those things?
I think I've had quite a few really good guests on. I don't know if there's one particular one that really stands out. I remember interviewing Susan X Meager. I think that's how you say her name. I know she called me in it when I interviewed her, and I can't remember. But I'm a woman of a certain age. My memory, but I remember she was brilliant and so generous with her time, and just like everything she said seemed to be kind of gold. You know what I mean? It's like I was at a much earlier stage in my writing career than she had been writing for over a decade, and she's got loads of experience. But she was just so genuinely a lovely person, and very humble, and just really giving. And she was on like a trip around Europe as well, which I loved. And she came to Europe every summer, which you speak to some Americans and that's not what they do. So they don't leave the country. Quite a lot of them. So
Yeah.
so I liked that about her, that she was quite European centric, but she was just lovely. But I think everybody I've interviewed has been fabulous, and the one thing that's really come out of it that is the best thing. Is that I've made a lot of friends from the podcast, which I know that you would be able to relate to as well.
Yeah.
And that's something I didn't really anticipate. I just thought I'd do it to maybe learn something from other people, but also to engage my sort of journalistic background, because it's been a fantastic way to do that as well, because I kind of didn't realize that I'd miss that kind of thing that I always used to do, like ask people questions. So I quite like doing that. So this was a way to carry on doing it. But I didn't expect to make friends through it, and I really have, particularly Harper Bliss and TB Markinson. TB, who I now host my other podcast with, Lesbians Who Write, and both Harper and TB, I met them first by doing the podcast. We've become very good friends in real life. We've written books together. We've been on holiday together. So I think that is the thing that I'll take.
Oh, that's fantastic! I didn't realize that. I knew you were doing the podcast, and I knew that you'd written a book with Harper Bliss, but I didn't know it went beyond that. That's fantastic. That's sweet. Oh, cute. I like that you over time put together like a nice, easy formula for doing, what you do. It's because, like I liked your question about who would you be the love child of? Is that the question? Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
That's awesome, because that really gives you something to think about, and I like that you always ask them what their view is, when they're doing their writing, like where do they work from, and I thought that's really interesting, because it's a lot of people have a lot of different answers. Nowadays you can do it from anywhere. You can do it from a cafe. You don't have to be sitting at a desk, so I like that, because it does give you an insight to, first of all, what their surroundings are, and second of all, like that question about who would you be who two people would you be the love child of? That's a great look into someone's mind about how they think of themselves. So it's incredible. So yeah, I like that, and there was an ease to it, I think. Did you find that people wanted to know the questions ahead of time, or no?
They usually did. Not everybody, but I always send them, purely because I am a Virgo and I like to know questions ahead of time. Although I don't know what you're going to ask me today. So I was quite relaxed about this one, because I thought, well, I kind of know the subject,
I know the subject well. Yeah, I just think it was, I think I remembered at a certain point, producing them, you got to kind of listen to them. You got to get a feel for how you wanted it to be and whatnot. And then over the time it became super, super easy. But I think I liked knowing what to expect when I got a file from you, that was, the easiest podcast to produce in my lifetime of producing podcasts. That became like the easiest. Like I was this close from just doing it from my phone. But because I had such faith in you, like after you'd learned, so much, I knew it was going to be great. And I know you would always say, just have a listen and make sure. And most of the time I would, but there were times where I had to just put my faith in you and get it up there. But it's really, really a testament to your work ethic. First of all, how long it went on. Like I said, the quality of it never wavered. It just kept getting better and better. And second of all, you still manage to pump out like 30,000 books a year. You write at an incredible pace. Like you just are putting out book after book after book. You're doing the podcast for my stream. You're doing the podcast, Lesbians Who Write. And I'm like, where is she finding the time to pump these books out? It's incredible. I mean, how disciplined are you?
It's kind of weird, isn't it? Because I don't really think of myself as that. I had lunch with somebody a few months ago, and they told me I was driven, and I said, "Oh, but I don't drive," It's weird when someone points it out to you. I don't really see myself as that disciplined. I'm quite a procrastinator, but I suppose I know you're giving me a look now.
Funny hearing that, like. When do you find time to procrastinate?
But I suppose, like you say, as time goes on, I did procrastinate a lot more in the beginning part of my career. Like in the first 3 years, I think I wrote 5 books.
Was that that was the London series, right? They went like the seasonal ones.
No, not all the London series, because I think I only wrote 2 of them in the first 2 or 3 in the first 3 years. So I wrote The Long Weekend and Nothing to Lose as well, I think, in that time. But anyway, I wrote 5 books in 3 years, which is not to be sniffed at, obviously. But then since then I've written 3 books a year. So it's stepped up. And yeah, I probably have added other things to my plate, but then I've gone full time, so that's the difference. And I suppose it's a funny thing, isn't it, when you're doing this yourself, because I'm independently published, so I've got my own publishing company. I do everything, myself. Well, with the help of lots of freelancers, I should say.
Yeah.
I hire cover designers and editors and things like that. But when you're doing it yourself, you're just kind of in it. Do you know what I mean? And you've got deadlines, and I just set myself deadlines, and then I just go for them. And I know roughly how long it takes to write a book, and I know what I can do, and in what time. So you kind of just get do it and get on with it.
It's amazing that you say I set deadlines for myself and I do it, because if I set a deadline for myself, I'm going to blow it off. If somebody else sets a deadline for me, I'm going to hit it.
Right.
So you take your deadline seriously. I don't take my deadline seriously.
Well, I suppose you see, like when I've got a deadline for myself, I then also have a deadline for the cover designer and the editor. So then I've got other people booked, and I've got to hit that. So
yeah, that part of it, right? Exactly. But yeah, it's just, I think it's amazing what you've accomplished. I mean,
Next up in the mix is Shannon Ronan, author of Coming Out Together.
Before that, like I met you when you were working on this project. Kind of.
Oh my gosh.
Email met.
Please remind me. Okay.
We emailed.
In the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. And
Okay.
And then I was like super psyched about what's being done with the book. Like tell us first of all, it's like a coming out memoir for LGBT people, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So it's titled Coming Out Together, Memoirs on the LGBTQ plus Experience. And really the mission behind it is just, those currently going through the process of coming out to know that they're not alone, or it can get better. And that there's community waiting on the other side. And so, yeah, just really been kind of a labor of love for almost 2 years now. So I'm super excited. I think I'm going to have it in my hands in the next 2-3 weeks.
Yeah. It's so exciting.
It's going to be like holding a baby. I mean, I got the fruit sent to me, which doesn't have the cover on it, but like I still get to feel the weight and the size, and I already like kind of teared up getting this. So yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, did you self-publish this? Because you have a publishing company, right?
Yeah, so I actually went ahead and created a publishing company to do this book. And I have ideas maybe for some future projects as well, but this was the first one that really came uh, into my mind to do. And I just decided to do it in that manner instead of self-publishing, actually be the publishing company.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And how did you find people that were willing to share their stories?
There was a few different avenues. So I don't know if you're familiar with Brandy Carlisle, the artist.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
It's kind of a weird, so during COVID and quarantining and all that, my wife and I actually joined her fan club, which is funny. We're like in our 40s in this fan club, but we had no idea. Like, we joined it to be able to listen to live music during quarantine times because they were doing these amazing compound quarantine shows. And just started watching those and became a part of this community of the fans, and like became friends with people and finally got to meet them in person, and ended up just being this community of inclusion and like this community we never knew we needed. It became such a big part of our life. And so some of the inspiration certainly for that book is the people we met and talked to. It's like the first date conversation, right? Like, so how'd you come out? So
Yeah.
We had a lot of those kind of conversations. So a number of those people contributed their stories, but then I reached out to, hundreds of LGBT centers across the country, almost every state. And, a number of them put it out to their communities. So we got some stories that way.
Great, because then you're getting them from like everywhere on the map.
Yeah. So it's a really great collection from different regions, but also the spectrum of trans, gay, lesbians, older, younger women, people who've been married for 20 years that realize that had kids, people,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's our target.
Yeah. The stories are all so uniquely beautiful. I'm really excited to share them. Yeah.
That's really, really, and the fact that people trust you with their story is a real tribute to you.
Thanks.
There's a lot of ways stuff like this can be exploited, and people never know who to trust and who not to trust. But it's
So
a
true.
testament to you that they were willing to share their stories.
Thanks. I hadn't been told that before. Thank you. It's sacred, right? It's like, I'm very grateful.
Did you find that people's stories were different depending on their ages? Like the younger the people, the less intense the coming out, or the easier it was to come out than from the people that were older when times were different?
I know what you're speaking to, because the struggle is definitely harder. The older generation had to deal with a lot less acceptance. But I will say some of the younger people who contributed still live in towns that don't have acceptance yet, right? So,
yeah.
That on an overarching level, I understand what you're saying, but I think that really the thread of, no matter how different the stories were, the thread of that struggle, we can all really kind of feel what the person was going through in these stories, because for those of us that have been through it,
so it could be a little more sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It could be a little more of a geographical, so much, not even so much as, that's exactly what I was saying, as generational, because like I'm thinking like people who are older even in their 70s, it was so much harder. I know women in their 70s that it was so much harder back then.
Yeah.
But even, and that's something that's really good to think about, because I've always lived in urban, more city type places, like in New York, and I live in Florida near Miami and Fort Lauderdale. So, but those small towns, especially in the Bible Belt, are probably, it's just as hard as maybe it used to be for people back who, in the 60s and 50s and 60s.
Yeah. I mean, I think we definitely need to give credence to those whose shoulders we stand on. I mean, that is definitely something I pointed out in my dedication, because, there is an awareness of, the older generations and what they had to endure. It was different. It was a lot harder overall.
Totally. Yeah, that's true. And I think I do feel like doing things like this, like publishing a book or doing a podcast where you can reach people who aren't comfortable coming out right now, but their computer is sacred, their laptop is sacred, their earbuds are sacred. They can listen to stuff that's relatable. I remember probably I think it was 2007, maybe I was doing a podcast out of my little apartment in South Florida before I moved to London. And we had a listener email us and say that she lived in a rural middle America state, and she didn't feel safe being out, but every Wednesday she felt like she was with her friends. And it was
incredible.
It really opened my eyes to that situation, and sometimes it's hard to get books, or you never know what a person's family life is like. Is the family computer in the middle of the living room? You know what I mean?
Right.
How difficult is it for them? And they will find a way to find a resource. So, the more stuff that we put out, I truly, truly feel like the more people we help, in some weird way. And that was 2007. And I feel like it still goes on. I don't think things have gotten all that much safer in the Midwest, or,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
The pendulum of progress, as Obama said, it kind of swings
Right.
forward and then further back. A lot of crazy stuff going on in the States these days.
Oh, it's so heartbreaking. It
But
really is.
In reference to what you're saying, the goals of this book are certainly to help heal people. And it's the book that I wish I had growing up. It probably would have been hidden under my mattress, but
right. But you would have found a way. That's right. You find a way, whether it's having to order it and to a different address and go get it.
You would have found a way.
Back of your pants, it's you find ways. But I think it's heartwarming, first of all, that you felt something and followed through with it. You felt these things, that people were sharing with you or whatever, and you said, you know what, I have a great idea. And not only did you collect the information and do the book, but like you said, the publishing company to distribute the book, it's just, you really carried the ball over the finish line. You
Thank you.
line and try and punch it in different ways. Clear vision, and and boom, mission accomplished. And you said your wife was working on this with you, or this was just?
Yeah, well, so maybe a little origin story, because certainly the people we met and talked to with their own stories, but really where the seed was really planted for me of doing it was, I don't know if you're familiar with the Matthew Shepard incident that happened back in 1998.
Yes.
Laramie.
So that was when I wasn't yet out, or I'm sorry, it happened a couple months after I had come out. And so it really shook me. And when I was driving out to Red Rocks back in 2021 in September to go to a Brandi Carlile concert, I saw that I was going to be driving through, there's a thread there, right? I was going to be driving through Laramie, Wyoming, which is where the incident happened. And so I made the choice to stop and go to his memorial bench that's there at the University of Wyoming, and to have my lunch. And I just sat there, and it was a lot heavier than I anticipated.
Sure.
And I just kind of made a silent promise to him. I was crying, and it was just I will do something in this life to make it so that your death wasn't in vain. I didn't know what yet, but I went on to the concert, was surrounded by that community of people I spoke of. And then I was driving home, and it just occurred to me, what if I collect these stories to share them to help others that need support? Okay, what if I create a publishing company and do, so all these, it was a road trip, and I just had time to think to myself. And that's kind of where I came home and just went to work. So
it's incredible. It's incredible. And you know what, you're right. What's happening, I feel like we're getting so numb. With Matthew Shepard, it was the first very public, country mourning. The community was mourning together over this, because they made it so public, which is amazing. Think back even further to Ryan White, with AIDS. Again, if people don't make these things, public, then we can't mourn as a community. But I feel cut to 2023, and doom scrolling on Twitter, and every other thing is about a trans murder or a drag queen fight or, people protesting at the show. And it's like, oh my God, like I need to see good. Like I need to see
Yeah.
good. There's so much
Yeah.
heartache out there that this is, the complete opposite of that. And I think, we at a time like this, we certainly need a book like what you're putting out,
Yeah. Well,
Did
what's
you
crazy too? Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to ask you, did you find it hard to wear all the hats, being the publisher and the writer? And I'm sure you're doing your marketing as well. Like I do that with my music. So I know what you speak of, waiting for that book to come. Because when I waited for my CDs to come, every time when I knew I was waiting for the UPS truck, and I remember the girl jumped out of the truck right almost in front of another truck that was coming. And I was like, no.
Yeah.
But it's hard to wear all the hats, and it's your passion. And probably the one thing you want to do is the writing, but you got to do the business stuff as well to put it all together as a project, right? Like, how did you find?
So this is going to sound crazy. My wife and I actually own a jerky company as well. It's called Two Chicks Jerky. For all intent and purposes, day-to-day stuff, distributor. So, and then I started this, and then we also actually manage a band, Small Town Strings, as well, which is Brandy Carlisle's niece and nephew. So, I kind of the business development side of it all, I really enjoy, actually. So all the hats, I kind of like being the one that gets to do all that stuff. The organization,
the right brain, left brain thing.
That's a knack.
That's hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's a knack. That's fantastic.
It's a lot though. I mean, I have a lot of lists, a lot of spreadsheets, but
yeah.
So
but weirdly, jerky aside, it all ties in together.
It does. Yeah.
The Brandy Carlisle
thing, the road trip, the band management, the book, it's all in a crazy yarn ball.
It really is. Weirdly enough, like we started doing the band stuff 2 months ago, and it's crazy how much translates to all. Obviously it looks different, but so yeah.
It's so cool though. I mean, like I think I like having a couple different projects that you can, okay, check that off that list, but now let's go here, check that off, work on that. Yeah, it kind of it clears your head for a second before you dive into something else, and then you go back to it. So that, but it is a knack.
Diving into this book, researching, there aren't any other books out there that are literally just collections of coming out stories. I mean, certainly there's a lot of LGBTQ plus literature and the theme, but nothing that's just like a collection of people's experience with coming out. And I think one of the cool things in this style of writing, memoir writing, it wasn't something that I put forward when I gave like submission guidelines to people, but all of the stories end with like a little hope and positive, and it just kind of occurred as I was reading the stories as they were submitted. I was like, wow, this is kind of a really cool little part to these stories that I hadn't, anticipated coming together that way. And I think that's also a really cool aspect of it.
Was it hard weeding? Was it hard weeding through the submissions?
No, I mean, they're all just so different. I was wondering if they would be really similar at all. Like, certainly the themes of religion and shame or parents taking it hard. They're present for sure, but they're all just really uniquely beautiful. I mean,
closing the mix today will be transgender queer fiction crime novelist Dharma Kelleher.
We found each other on Threads, and I was super thrilled that you reached out, because what I love, like I read your bio. Mm-hmm. What I love is like the first line is that you are openly out and proud trans author. And I was like, like that's the best first sentence of a bio ever.
It usually kind of winnows out all the haters and everything. It's like, don't even have to deal with them anymore.
Yeah, and if you don't want to read any further, this is where you stop. And if not,
Exactly.
I can continue. Yeah. So I just absolutely love that. Um, and I love the genre that you write in. I was just telling Jay. So what I'm hoping is that you can elaborate a little bit more on gritty crime drama. Yes,
So,
'cause I love that kind of
sure.
stuff on TV.
Yes, very interesting genre category.
Yeah, I mean, I've, I watch a lot of it on TV, and I read a lot of it. I mean, even when I was a teenager, I was reading like Lawrence Block and Sarah Paretsky and Sarah Graft or Sue Grafton. So yeah.
That's fantastic. So my first question has to be, you must be able to plot a crime really well to write about it, right? Like my second book had a little bit of crime in it.
Hmm.
And I remember thinking, how do I make this work? Like, how do thieves and robbers and stuff like think this kind of stuff through? I was writing from the opposite, from the actual criminal's point of view.
Right, exactly.
So I was like, oh my God, this is hard. I don't know that I thought this through all the way. So yeah, I got stuck a couple of times, but I in my opinion, anybody that's gonna make a lead character a badass butt kicking woman, bring it on.
Mhm.
So do you tell us like your process? Like what
My process, well, I mean, I've got three different series. Two of them are ongoing, and it's kind of a challenge because the one series is from the point of view of a bounty hunter.
oh nice.
So, right. And that's always presents a challenge to me because, like, it's not like she's trying to find out who done it. We already know who done it. Now
Right.
she's trying to go, okay, where did they go and how do I catch them and put them back in custody?
Yes. Yes.
And then how do I make it interesting? It's not like, oh, they're at their house. Okay, bring them home. I bring them to jail. And so I play around with ideas. I try to come up with some interesting. The first book in my Jinx Blue series was very loosely inspired by the Gypsy Rose Blanchard story. I don't know if you're
Oh,
familiar with that.
timely. Timely.
I mean, yeah, and I wrote it, I guess, a few years after she went to prison.
Yeah.
And I was just so moved by her story. I mean, I felt like she shouldn't have been sent to prison because she'd been abused by her mother all her life.
Right. Her mentally.
Exactly. And so I wondered, well, what would happen if she didn't show up to her court hearing, if she just disappeared? And everyone's still under the impression she's this physically and mentally handicapped little girl. I'm like, how could she have just disappeared? And so I just kind of play around with ideas like, okay, where could she be? Who could have taken her? And what red herrings can I throw in the mix?
Yes. Yeah. How do I
And
keep
it's
it
just a lot of
interesting?
fun. It's just like, okay, I did a lot of research as far as bounty hunters and how they operate and everything, what the laws are, and in Arizona they operate legally. And it's just kind of fun to play around with ideas. And of course, then I have to figure out, okay, I got to deal with all the plot holes that come up naturally.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like, how do I plug these up? Yeah. Exactly.
Exactly. How do I make this make sense? Because it doesn't, in real life, things don't have to make sense, but in fiction, they do.
Yeah. And the thing of it is, it's like when you have that reader base, they'll call you out on it.
Oh, and they will. They have.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
So
had
I was
readers
gonna
say,
ask
well,
you that.
yeah, exactly.
You have I mean, you're growing your fan base.
I
Um,
am.
you have a series, and is that ongoing now, or you've completed one
Yeah,
series?
I wrote a 4 book lesbian outlaw biker series. So think Sons of Anarchy, but lesbians.
Oh,
And then I've got I'm about to start the 6th book in my bounty hunter series, and then I'm going to be launching the 3rd book in my goth vigilante series.
oh my
So
God.
Yeah, this is about a young gal. She's a tattoo artist. She's goth, and she's trans, and she's a vigilante.
That's fantastic.
Someone hurts someone she cares about, and the police don't do anything about it. She takes action.
Oh my God. I feel like these could be Netflix series.
Yeah.
I would love to see them as Netflix series.
Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the Lesbian Sons of Anarchy.
The
What's the name of this series?
name of the series is the Shay Stevens Outlaw Biker series.
Love it. Love
I
it.
was at the time I was a biker. I quit riding a few years ago, but I was a biker. I was a member of a all women's motorcycle club. Well, motorcycle group. We weren't officially an MC,
Uh-huh.
and I liked the Sons of Anarchy, but like all the women were just like the old ladies and riding on the bitch seat and
Yeah,
all that
in the
stuff.
afterthought.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I'm a member of a women's biker club, and
Right? Yeah,
so
that's
that's what I started writing that.
it's so fun. Like, has your is it your personal journey? Do you find like worked into these
Oh,
books?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm always minding my real life for little tidbits and things like that. So, my wife recently bought herself a switchblade, which are legal in Arizona. I know. I'm like, you bought yourself a switchblade? How can... She said, and she'll sit in her chair and she's just doing that. She got me one too. So she sits in her chair and she's just sitting there, she's watching TV and she's going, I'm like, should I be worried?
I was going to ask
It's
you.
like a fidget spinner.
Yeah. Is she happy? Is she
She's
happy?
very happy.
Okay.
She's very happy. We're very much in love. We've been married 25 years and we're very much in love.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, nice. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, that is
Don't
fantastic.
hear that very often.
Yeah, and how supportive, right? Because I know
Oh yeah.
what it's like
Yeah,
when you're the
she's been very
creative.
supportive of my author career.
Yeah, when you're the creative one, I mean, I would go through waves of feeling guilty because I
Oh
wasn't,
yeah.
contributing the same
Hmm.
amounts and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. And it was just, you know, it, I just feel so fortunate, that my wife's like, do whatever you want, do whatever
My
you want.
wife is
As
the
long as my
same
laundry,
way.
as long as my laundry gets done, do whatever you want. You're fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I went to 20 Books Vegas last November at the behest of my wife. She said, "No, you should go." I'm like, "But I'd have to leave you for 5 days." She said, "No, you should go." I'm like, "Okay,
Go.
Really nice.
no, please."
That is so important,
Oh, it
because
is.
as I'm a musician, not an author, but I, it's hard when you have a partner that isn't 100%
Oh yeah.
supportive, and you always feel you're not paying enough attention to the other person. And
Hmm.
I've had relationships like that where
Yeah,
it
me
was
too.
really very difficult to focus on your art when you're feeling this guilt that you're not
Yeah.
there for the
Yeah.
other person, and they make
Hmm.
you feel it like Denise, you said, Gemma says, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But I, in the past, had people say, you don't pay enough attention to me. I might as well be a picture on the wall, and
Yeah.
No, yeah, they have to understand. I think a
well, they
lot of
need
it is
you when you're
understanding.
doing it, right? So, like, it's with the music, they don't realize before you get on the stage, it takes a lot of work to practice, and
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so
Rehearsals.
important to have that. And
And
20,
the other end of it too is that you do your own songwriting, you know. So
yes,
there is
yeah,
like, I just need a minute, like I need to write stuff
need
down.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to have
Hmm.
your head cleared from
Oh yeah,
guilt.
it is.
Because you're writing about guilt, a song
Yeah.
about guilt.
You have
Hmm.
to, yeah, you got to find the right person. It's a
Yeah,
delicate balance
It
and it
is.
has to work in order for you to stay unclogged,
yes,
Hmm.
for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
You know? Like
yeah,
I always like have to have the conditions perfect, like for me to be able to sit down and get into it. But
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
like I remember there's an author over here, Clare Lydon.
Oh yeah, I love her.
Okay, you know of her?
Oh yeah,
So,
I met her in Vegas. Yeah.
oh, fantastic. So I
Yes.
have her doing a podcast on my feed, and
Hmm.
I always like admired her discipline.
Oh yeah.
She had like, such an interesting process, like would give herself that word goal, how many words
Hmm.
a day. Plus she self-publishes and she was
Right.
doing my podcast and another one. And I'm like,
Hmm.
never in a million years. Like seriously, that is so much. And she's so disciplined. Yeah, it's amazing.
Have
Really,
to be.
really.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm there yet.
Podcasts are a lot of work. I've tried to do a few of them, and I'm like, nope, too much work.
Yeah, nah. I mean, but thankfully, like we share the load, you know,
Hmm.
and that's super helpful. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not I don't the older I get, like I was just saying, I miss doctor's appointments, I missed grocery delivery dates. I don't like I'm going through a scattered phase right now.
Same.
You just said I said I'm blaming it on January and
Yeah.
I'm gonna stand
All
behind that.
January's fault.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and get it together in February and see if I can get back on track, but it's not easy. Like it's
Mm-mm.
just, like I have so much admiration for especially like people like you that are writing series. It's like I wrote literally two books. Like one was split in half, so
Hmm.
one and a part two, and then the third, and I did it all within 6 months, and then she
Hmm.
came back and was like, all smug, can't get it back again, can't get it back again. So I
Hmm.
don't know if
Wow.
it's gonna come back because I just lack the discipline. Like I just
Yeah.
spent a day and a half watching Daisy Jones and the Six.
Like writer's block, Denise? You mean like that type of thing? Like
Nope,
not.
nope. I have it all laid out. I just can't find the discipline to sit down and start typing.
Hmm.
You know what? I've been going through that too. I have to answer a series of questions for an article they're doing about me in this magazine, and I haven't had the discipline to sit down and answer the questions because it's a
Yeah,
lot of
it's
questions.
Oh
brutal.
That's how
yeah.
they interview you for this magazine. They send you the questions and you answer it, you write them out, and then you
Hmm.
send it back to them and they write the stories. So they
Yeah,
come up with
yeah.
questions for you. But I wanted to ask you, how do you come up with your ideas for the characters, like as the main, like the Gypsy
I
Rose idea?
Yeah, I all over the place. My wife was the one that came up with the idea that she should be a bounty hunter because um, Penguin Random House had published my first two books in the biker series, and I wanted to write something with a trans main character since I'm trans. Whoops, sorry, my phone. Sorry about that. And I didn't want to write a police procedural because I read too many of those. I didn't want to write um, uh, the typical serial killer. I just wanted to write something unique. And my
Yeah.
wife came up with the idea of writing a bounty hunter. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I started doing research. But I come up with ideas from all over the place. I like a very diverse character cast. So I have non-binary characters. I've got characters of all racial backgrounds, and I've got I just try to have a variety of human experience reflected, and it makes it for interesting, and it's great grist for creating backstories. Like, okay, I'm writing the sixth book in this series. I'm like, now where I'm going to take this, and whose backstory am I going to play around with,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so yeah, it just makes it interesting.
Do you ever worry about when you describe a non-binary person or gender fluid person or a lesbian or just a queer
Hmm.
person, or
Uh-huh.
do you worry that it like do you worry about like your wording and your descriptions
I
and
am
because
very
I feel like people
mindful
are
of it.
getting so, yeah, it's like walking through a minefield. um
Feel
I
like for me, it didn't feel like a minefield, but it's about being aware of not causing harm,
Right.
not reinforcing negative stereotypes. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to write a trans character in a thriller was because 70% of the time you see a trans character, they're a sex worker. Nothing wrong with sex workers, but we have a lot of different professions to choose from,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
or they're the murder victim, or worse, they're the serial killer.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm like, so I just, I wanted to push back against that stereotype. And when I write an intersex character, I wrote an intersex character, and I talked to a number of people who were intersex, and I had a few of them read through the sections where this character was mentioned and the whole thing, and I get feedback from them as a sensitivity reader, or as I prefer to, an expert reader, because they've got the experience that I'm trying to
Yes.
convey.
That's
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah.
That is-
And so,
Right.
yeah,
Yes.
but
Right.
I'm very mindful anytime I'm writing a character that is outside of my experience in terms of racial background or religious background. The book that's coming out in June, I've got the girlfriend character is Jewish, and a good mutual friend of theirs is Palestinian American. And I explored this whole issue of the Hamas or Gaza war
Yeah.
from both perspectives, because I wanted to present the common humanity. Because
Mhm.
Yeah.
ultimately, I start with the humanity of a character.
Oh God, that's so well said, so well put, and
Yeah.
so well researched. Like that is exactly, I think, going to the source. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's how imperative. And you said if I heard right, you're in Arizona.
Yes.
So in my what I've never been there. I always I guess I wondered if the community is as diverse, or do you have to find it? You got to go
Well, I mean,
looking. It's not just
yeah. I
this.
mean, as far as the queer community, I mean, I've not. So I moved here 30 years ago, and I'm not really an active part of the local queer community. I mean, there was a when we first got here, I there was a gay bookstore, and yay, it's gone now. Um, we've had community centers pop up and then disappear.
Um, so when you get an idea for the main character, now you have to like come up with the other people around them. So
Right.
that's like, is it easier to come up with those other people when you get the main person set?
It's always a challenge for every character because you wanna play off. You don't want all the characters to be alike, so you want to give them their unique voice. The in the Jinx Blue Bounty Hunter series, her best friend is uh, a Latina woman who has chronic fatigue syndrome,
Brilliant.
and she's kind of her hacker best friend, and I play off of that, and I use that to create drama. Like, okay, she's got a flare up, so maybe my bounty hunter character Jinx will like go do a grocery run for her, and I just showed the friendship, the
Yeah.
sisterhood there, and I try to play off of each character's what are their fears, what are their weaknesses, their strengths, and I just kind of play off of that to create the conflicts and the drama, but also the heartfelt moments as well.
We want to do this show to put a spotlight back on the people of our community, our big
Right.
crazy community, the creatives that are doing something that, especially something positive, like,
Exactly.
yeah, it's nice that we're growing along with the people that we have on that are
Hmm.
promoting, things and it's like everybody helping everybody, and it's
Yeah,
amazing.
exactly. Community.
Yeah, yeah. Perfect. So I listen, I'm so thrilled, and I will, now that I know there's going to be audiobooks coming.
Yeah.
I will, yeah, I will keep an eye out for those. But yeah, it's been lovely to meet
Well,
you.
thank you both for having me. It's been wonderful.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll let you get back to work. So you've got your gazillionth other books coming out now. So
I know.
go do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
And that's a wrap for this week's Best of Rewind series. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Why do you always run back to the lover you once knew? You're addicted to her touch, that's true. My addiction. And I confess, my addiction is you. Don't ask me why I'm here tonight. I had to take this midnight drive to find you. And as I come in through the door, I see her dancing on the floor beside you. Why do you always run back to the lover you once knew? You're addicted to her touch, that's true. And I confess, my addiction is you. You look at me and in my eyes you see the hurt I can't disguise. I watch you, and though it seems I look right through, I'm noticing your every move. She's got you. Why do you always run back to the lover you once knew? You're addicted to her touch, that's true. And I confess, my addiction is you. You're my addiction. Why do you always run back to the lover you once knew? You're addicted to her touch, that's true. And I confess, my addiction is you. I turn away to mask the pain, but jealousy reveals my rage and madness. And knowing you can read my mind consumes me in a shameful kind of sadness. Why do you always run back to the lover you once knew? You're addicted to her touch, that's true. And I confess, my addiction is you. You are my drug, my ever-waking need. I got you in my blood. You've got me on my knees. Why do you always run back to the lover you once knew? You're addicted to her touch, that's true. And I confess, my addiction